Okay, welcome class. This is the March Rhino for Windows getting started. And I am Mary Fugier with Robert McNeel. I'm a tech and a trainer out of the Seattle office, and I will be uh, leading the training today. And we have materials for you to download for today's class. If you are watching this from the recording at some future date, then you will want to look in the description of the video and get the materials for today's class. So they're there for you to download and be able to do the video as a tutorial. So while you're going through the training, it will be helpful if you have a setup like this. Um, and whether you're doing that live or you're going to do this with the recording after, having Rhino on one screen and having the video on the other is highly recommended. And I don't expect that you are going to be able to do 100% of the model. A lot of that will depend on your experience. You may just uh, start the command, poke the button, as we say, and just start working with it. Whether you get exactly what I have may not be possible given the 2 hours for the training, but that's where the video comes in. So do as much as you can. Do not worry. Go back to the video and start and stop and fill in any of the blanks that you might have missed. So let's take a look at today's project, and we are going to do an interior renovation. So this is today's project. And again, I have a lot of the blocks already pre-downloaded and in the file, so all we have to do is insert them. The idea for this project came from last March when I did a getting started on the vanity, the cabinet bathroom vanity here. And a lot of those that were in the getting started, this getting started said, because at the end of it, I turned on all the walls and, it's sitting in a bathroom. They're like, oh, we'd really like to know how to do that. So finally, a year later, I am doing this getting started, which actually is a place to put the vanity. And we are going to use that vanity that we did back last March. So if you're just joining the training, I want to remind you to go to the Materials tab and get the download, the zip file that has the um, file in that we're going to start with. So we're going to use a file that we start with. So when I downloaded the Materials tab, from the Materials tab, I have the zip file, I unzipped it, and I'm here, ready to get started and open this file. Okay, now in addition to myself, we also have Matt Bennett in the training, and Matt's going to be working to help with the chat questions. So, Matt, do you want to go ahead and say hello? And that will help us out as we get moving in the training. Matt is there. He is a tech from Seattle office, and we're hoping to get him involved with some of these trainings that we do. So there's nothing like getting him started in today's class. So thanks, Matt. Um, I do have the downloads, the links that are the two files that you need. Sometimes when I post it here, they don't work out of the Go to Training chat. Maybe that's been resolved, but those are the two files that I want you to get. And Matt, if anyone arrives late at the training, if you could go ahead and share that, I would really appreciate it. Okay, so while you're doing that, I want to talk a little bit about the basic Rhino website and some of the resources out there. The number one thing that you can get off the Learn page is the link to the videos of the Getting Started. So if you pick on this wine rack out on the Learn page that is on our main website here, Learn, then you can pick on Rhino for Windows and the wine rack, and that will take you to the links to all of the albums where we have the videos from the Getting Started. So this is the album where today's video is going to be posted. So if you have to leave early and you want to get to the video, it'll probably be up there within the next few hours. You can also see the other videos that we have done, and the uh, push-pull vanity that we're going to use in this Getting Started is here. So if you miss that Getting Started and you want to do that model, you can. You can do it with the video that is out here. So I encourage you to do that. A lot of the blocks that we're using in today's training are public domain blocks, and they're available like here on the Kohler website, American Standard. I mean, a lot of the manufacturers, Windows doors, they have blocks for you to download. And then I've also filled in with some additional blocks from 3D Warehouse and SketchUp 3D Warehouse. Rhino does a really good job of importing SketchUp files. So our developers work with their developers and we get a really nice import of SketchUp files. So we're going to be using this pendant in today's model. And what you'll find out here on the Kohler website, and this is one of my favorite features of this website, right with the product information, they have design files. And if you go down to 3D, I would recommend getting the SketchUp files over the drawing files because they just import better. Now, for the sake of time and efficiency in this class, I've already done that for you. So if you're wondering where the blocks came from, a lot of them came from right out here from the Kohler website. And there are some pretty neat things we can do by linking the block to this URL so that when you pick on the block, if you need more information about it, you can go right out here to the website. So all of that comes from using a really good website. And I love the Kohler blocks and their website. It's just really easy to spec out on. Now, there's probably others that I just haven't used. So just if you're going to be using a certain manufacturer, let's say Milgard Windows, then go to their website and find out what resources that they offer. Okay, so the other important thing that I want to point out about this website is that this is where you download Rhino. So if you already have a licensed version, you can just go right here to the licensed version. If you're downloading the eval, you will get faced with a survey. So just be aware of that. It's not the same if you already have Rhino and you can download just the installation file, that's great. You want to do the survey. So um, one of the things that I also like to mention here is that when you purchase Rhino, you're not committing to a platform. So if you do the Cloud Zoo install, which is the Rhino account install, then you will, I'll just type it in here, Cloud Zoo, see if I can find my favorite link here. If you put your key in your Rhino account and you validate off the Cloud Zoo, then you can run Rhino on any computer. So you can have multiple Windows computers, you can have Windows and Mac. So you're not committing to a version of or a platform of Rhino. And with the Zoo installation, you can run it at work on Windows, at home on the Mac. And Rhino 8 is unifying the UI. It's made some pretty big steps so that you can work on Windows or you can work on Mac and not see a whole lot of difference in the UI. So I just wanted to mention that. I know with Matt on tech support and myself, a lot of people call and say, well, I have the Mac version and it's not working. And maybe there's a particular command that works better on Windows, or maybe there's some type of issue with the Mac, but everybody gets both. So you get to decide where you're going to run it. And that does go back and forth. There's sometimes something that Windows has that Mac does better. In fact, I really like working on the Mac. And the Mac has versions, so you can just roll back to a different version of the file. You don't have to save as much. You can have multiple documents open. So I will be doing this next week, this getting started on the Mac platform. Okay, so those are just a few basics that I wanted to mention. So here's the file that is already done, and I do have a ceiling layer, but a lot of times I turn it off so it's easier to work on the model. So the model is going to essentially be a virtual build of this room. It's about 150 square foot master bath, and I've got two separate vanities, one on each side. And when you look at it in this render preview mode, you don't get the reflections off the mirror. But if I do a rendering or I look at it in the real-time render mode, then I will see the reflections off the mirror. So you can see here when I pick render, I start to see a little bit more development of the materials and the lighting in the scene. Although the quick render, the render display mode that we're looking at here, is an excellent way to experience your model with materials very quickly. And so there's usually a point in the model where I start looking at least the perspective view in render mode. Now, the other viewports that we're looking at here, again, some simple navigation with the wheel. I'm going to lock these viewports together with you. Sometimes you'll take, like this is supposed to be the front, and it's gotten off of the parallel projection. And it's really easy to reset that by going to the menu and set the view to front. And when I do that again, I'm back to a parallel view. But anyway, we're going to get there, but I just wanted to give you a little tour of this model. Now, in addition to the model, we have active and live layouts. So on the layout, and we're going to do at least one layout, The layout represents the sheet of paper that you're going to put in your printer or plotter. In this case, it's a D size sheet, so it is appropriate that we would be sending this out to a full size plotter. But these windows are called details. And if I double click on a detail, it becomes active. So in this case, I can zoom the perspective view and pick another view that I think may look better on this sheet. And I can double click on the detail and double click out. Now, these details down here actually involve a clipping plane. So the reason why I can clip through the wall and look at it like this is because I have a clipping plane active in this detail. And the other cool thing about this detail, it's in a new Rhino 8 display mode called monochrome, and it shows the edges of the surface, but it doesn't show any material. So it looks really bright white and very easy to understand the design without complicating it with the materials. So I have a couple layout pages here. I didn't develop this page a whole lot, but I could. And then page 3 is where I have the plan view, and the plan view is actually a clipping plane that's horizontal and through the model so that I can look at it and cut through it at like 4 feet above the finished floor. And in the set that you download, there is a PDF, and the PDF has the dimensions on it like you're looking at here. So you might say, well, I work in meters, and that is perfectly fine. It turns out that in Rhino, you can have your model set to, let's say, feet or inches, but you can model the units in meters. And we have a option where if you type in a distance followed by an M for meters or cm for centimeters or mm for millimeters, it will take the distance that you type in and it will convert it to that unit system. So just because this model is in inches, and you can see that down here, doesn't mean that I can't specify distances here and dimensions in the unit system that I'm most familiar with. And for you, if that's meters, that's why I've included the meters for that distance. I will be using feet and inches, but just be aware of that. I will show you how you can use that little decoration on the distance. So if I type in 1.8 m, then Rhino will convert it. So a lot of times I'll get questions from customers that say, I've gotten a model in meters and I want to be able to model in inches. Well, the reality is you can leave it in meters, you can model in inches, vice versa here, and not have to change that model. And there's certain things that happen when you change the unit of the model. Rhino needs to know, are you going to scale the model? Are you going to keep it 1-to-1? And most of the time, if you're converting into a different unit system, you would want to scale the model. But then now the annotation styles that you have in that model are wrong because they were for the other unit system. So sometimes it's just more effective to keep the model in the unit system that it was modeled in, and the annotation style. So if I pick on the yellow gear up here, the annotation style itself supports multiple units, so I can have that alternate unit and put the M for meter descriptor in the dimension, so everyone here knows that we have dimensioned in both imperial and metric for this model. Okay, so that comes from the annotation style. Now that you know what we are going to be doing, let's go ahead and open up a new model. And because I'm on Windows, Rhino wants to know, what do you want to do with the changes you made? Do you want to save them or not? I'm going to pick no. And new offers me a list of templates. And sometimes if you're using a third-party plugin like I do at times, the Visual Arc plugin, you can see they have their own templates, which are going to load with defaults that are appropriate for that plugin. I may have a few more than you have, but I can begin a new model with the units and the default annotation styles that are appropriate for that unit and that precision. So I'm going to just pick on small objects millimeters and begin a new file using small objects millimeters. And in a new model, completely new, like we have here, you can see that we have 3 parallel views and 1 perspective view. We also have some default layers. And if I pick this box command right here, then it's going to prompt me to pick a first corner, a second corner, and then a height. And that can be anywhere. When you do that, you'll see that box appear in all the viewports. And just quick navigation here, all of the viewports use the wheel to zoom in and out. And panning, you can pan with the right mouse button in the parallel viewports, but the perspective viewport, the right mouse will rotate the view. And if you need to pan, you'll have to use the shift key. Now, if you use the shift key in the parallel viewports, that also works. It's just you have to use it in the perspective view. And each of these viewports has its own construction plane, its own grid, and its own way of displaying, which we call the display mode. The perspective view is generally set to world top, at least in the templates, but you can change it to world front or world right or something custom as well. So if I go up here on perspective and I pick the little down arrow and I select monochrome, then it's going to display that viewport in the monochrome display mode. Okay, and I can do that to any of these viewports. I can view it in the shaded display mode. Okay, so as you're moving around the model, those are your typical navigation commands. And just so we all kind of know terminology here, I do want to run through this as the title bar. And when we save the file, it'll give us the name of our file there. We also have menus, and the menus up here just lay out the way Rhino is organized. And I think that's what I really appreciate about the menus. It gives you a view or a window into how Rhino's organized. So we have curves, we have surfaces, we have uh, sub-D surfaces, we have solids. Solids form a closed volume. We can create solids by joining surfaces together, or we can just create them with primitive commands like the box here. Rhino also supports meshes. We have drafting commands like dimensions and layouts and clipping planes. When you have geometry, you can transform it. So you can move, copy, scale, rotate, trim. Trim and extend, or actually trim, split, and extend. Trim and split are on the edit menu. Extend depends on whether you have a curve or a surface, so you'll find those on their respective menus. And there is a way to find out from Rhino where commands are located, and I'm going to show you that here in just a moment. The most important part of the screen is your command prompt area. And this is where you communicate with Rhino, where Rhino communicates with you. So it's very important to watch that. And if you're taking a command that is asking you to select objects and you keep typing in a distance, it's not going to work. And you're going to know right away because the command line is going to come back and say, this is bad input. So if you look at those that do well with Rhino, they're always watching that command prompt area. So just kind of train yourself from the beginning to keep an eye on that. There's one other thing that I want to mention here about the command line. You can type in commands, and let's say that you find a video that Kyle Hutchins has done, and all of a sudden Kyle is in the middle of the loft command and you don't know where it's at. So you can type in commands, and if we go over to the right side here, there are panels that will give us help on the command. So if you type in a command in the command line, the help panel, which hopefully you have open, but I'm going to tell you how to get it open here in a moment. It will not only tell you about how to use the loft command, but it will tell you where it's located. So it's in the surface creation and surface sidebar, but you'll also find it on the surface menu. So anyway, you can type in commands, but you can also get help from where that command is located if you prefer to take it from the toolbar in the future. So this is what the command looks like. So if I go to Surface Tools right now, I can find the loft command very easily there. Okay. The question Colleen asks is, what does the check mark mean in the layer? And that is our current layer. So even though we can have unlimited number of layers, only one can be current at one time. And just like, Matt beautifully chatted out there, when I create new objects now, they'll go on that layer. So we're going to be working with layers. But if I make the red layer current and I go back to the standard tab here and make a box, then that box is on that layer. It's a story you're going to hear a lot, okay? Although you can have multiple layers, only one can be current. Same with annotation styles. You can have multiple annotation styles, but only one can be current. And that's the one that controls where the new annotation is going to go. Okay, we're going to get over there here in short time. The sidebar is going to offer you different options than the toolbar across the top. So similar to the menu bar, we also have these tab toolbars that very efficiently show the commands in this part of the screen. Standard is probably the one that you have current right now. Now, if your screen looks a lot different than mine, there's a command in Rhino 8 called reset. And the reset command will very quickly reload the Windows defaults. Now, you may not have to do a factory reset, and that will delete even custom display modes. But if you wanted to restore your window layout and toolbar configuration, you can do that. And that way, when you're looking at your screen and you see that it looks different than mine, you can very quickly, with that reset command, get back to the way Rhino installed. And sometimes when you are teaching it, especially if you have students that are bringing their own computers, things look wildly different on your students' computers. It's a very good command to take a note of. Okay, so when I go over here to Surface Tools, remember it said the loft command was over here on the sidebar. And if I go back to the standard toolbar, then the toolbar changes with the standard sidebar. So you'll see how that sidebar updates. We also have object snaps or point filters that help us snap onto existing geometry. So if I put the check mark here in end and I grab the polyline command, I can go over here and pick on existing geometry. So object snaps are point filters that we use to snap onto existing geometry, thus the name OSNAP. Now, the OSNAPs are always available when I take a command. So if I take the circle command and I go up here and pick on my box, it's always available to snap onto that location. I don't have to activate the OSNAP for each of those picks. Now, the ones that I keep on are endpoint, midpoint, center, and then I turn things on or off as needed. Okay. There's another um, button here that I want to draw your attention to, and it has to do with the sidebar toggle. And sometimes when I'm teaching these getting started, there'll be a panicked chat where a user can't find their sidebar. So this is what you want to take a look at, is the toggle that controls the visibility of the sidebar. Now, for this training, I want both sidebars visible. But if for some reason you've turned those off, go ahead and turn those back on again so that you can get to the sidebar. There's another filter that we have here, two tabs for OSNAP and for filter that we'll be using towards the end of class. But you'll see that one, I'll call that one out at some point. Below the viewports, you'll see tabs, and you might wonder why these are here. If you double click on the viewport title, it maximizes the viewport to the screen. So this makes a lot more sense now why there are tabs here for your viewports. And a double click will bring you back. The for view command will also bring you back right up here, for view. You can also type it in to go back to your standard for view display. And the area of the screen down here, the status bar, is very important because it very quickly tells us where the cursor is at. And when we're drawing, that's going to be really helpful. What unit you're in, what layer you're on, what other modeling aids you're using, and then also gumball, auto seaplane that we'll be using in this class. And we'll talk about what history is. So this is referred to as the status bar. And then we get over here to the panels. And there are a lot of panels, a lot more than meet the eye here. So we have the properties panel, we have the layer panel. The layer panel is going to get very well developed for the model that we're doing. And although only one layer can be active at one time, you can change objects to any of these layers. And one way to change this to a different layer is to select it. It turns yellow, which is why we avoid yellow layers in Rhino, although you might have used them in other programs like AutoCAD. They're very confusing to have a yellow layer in Rhino. But when I pick that, I can go down here to the status bar and put this object on layer 03, let's say the blue layer. So this part of the screen has two functions. One is to make a different layer current. So when I make layer 02 current, you can see that check mark appear. but it also allows me to pick on existing geometry and change them to a different layer. Okay, so layers are how we organize our model. Some programs call them levels, but what they allow us to do is control what parts of the model we see. We view, we print. We can also assign properties to layers like materials, which is super convenient because if I have a glass layer and everything I put on that glass layer will be using that glass material, then I've really cut the amount of time exponentially that it takes to assign materials. And also, if the glass material changes, maybe I'm going to go from a clear glass to an obscure glass, all I have to do is change it on the layer, and all the objects that are assigned to that layer update. So it's extremely efficient, and you'll see how we have them organized in the model that we do. If you come up with a set of layers that you use all the time, then you can make your own template and begin your new model from that template. And it will take on all the layers, the unit defaults, the annotation styles, any blocks that you have in the model. So that's essentially what we're doing by getting you to download the file today, is that when you open it, we're ready to go to work, and we have a layer configuration that works for this interior renovation. And some of the materials have already been assigned, but we'll get a good taste of how to do that. But for efficiency, we have some of that work already done. Um, so let's see, what else do we want to look at here? Let's go over to the panels and right click on the panels. And notice in Rhino 8 that our panels are vertical. If you pick here, you could make them horizontal. So if you really, really liked the way that Rhino 7 worked, you can make your panels go across the top of the screen. The reason why they're vertical is usually have more room vertically, but you know, it's up to you and you can change it with that setting. If you right click on any of the panels, it brings up this menu, and you can open up additional panels. Now, some of the panels that we're going to open may have to do with materials and layouts. That will come up later. But what I would like you to do is open up a panel called tutorials. And one of the questions I think that Matt and I get a lot is where's the Rhino training materials? And the answer to that is they're right in Rhino. So if you have Rhino full version or eval, they're actually the same version. It's just the license key that tells Rhino when to stop saving. So there isn't really an evaluation version. There's just an evaluation key. If you start here with the user guide, there's a PDF, there's an HTML that's going to run you through some basic material and exercises. So if you want to know where to go after this training, go to the user guide and open the PDF and any of these files. So if the PDF says open EdgeSurf, you can double click on it. I'll pick Notice Save Changes, and it opens up the EdgeSurf model. Okay, and you can save it or not save it. If you double click on the PDF, it'll open the PDF. And then after the user guide, then the level 1 training guide is another um, training guide that has some really good foundational information. And if you like to learn with a good set of basic knowledge, then the training guide is a really good option. Now, if you prefer to learn in kind of an as needed way, that's where the videos of the getting started, I think, are better for that learning style. So, and I think younger learners of students that are learning Rhino enjoy this method better, where they're building a project in under 2 hours. So we do know that there are different learning styles. So being able to provide training materials in both foundational and as needed learning is something we strive for. So in the level 1 training, I want you to scroll all the way down and open a file called What is Rhino? And when you double click on it, it will open in our Rhino application window. And what I like about this file is it gives you a really broad view of all the objects that you can create in Rhino. And starting with curves. So if you look here for dimension, we have a curve, we have a hatch, we have a polyline curve, we have a circular curve. We have curves that are freeform, and the freeform curves are degree 3 or higher. They're going to give us our most flexibility. So if I come up here and take polyline, and I start drawing this polyline, ortho will lock my cursor into horizontal or vertical. And as I'm drawing that polyline, I can type in a distance like 5, 10. And when I type in the distance, it locks the cursor and I can pick to set that length. Okay. So that's, one way that we get those distances. We're going to be using that in our model. After I create a polyline, a lot of times I want to confirm the distance. I can go to Analyze and Distance and go from here to here and say, oh, okay, that is 23. Let's see what this is, 0.94. That is 12. And if I want to dimension them, I'll go to linear dimension and create a dimension. I always say dimensions last longer than the inquiry command. So creating a dimension is something that I commonly do. Most objects have control points on them, and if you pick the control point, you can move that control point and change the distance. Now, I do have the gumball on, so I'm going to turn it off for now, and when I move this point to a different location, you can see that dimension upgrade. Henry, what version of Rhino are you running? Okay, so what is Rhino is under level 1. Okay, and go to level 1. It's the primary category. And then scroll all the way down and look for what is Rhino. Okay, give that a try. This is actually referring to a website, so they don't get installed when you installed Rhino. So you may have to make sure you have the latest version. Check for updates. Yeah, keep looking. It can go off the screen. Okay, I think you're good now. So yeah, it's really kind of a cool feature. Our coworker Brian wrote it, and everybody actually looks at the same list. So in the old days, we used to have you download a packet of training materials, and then yeah, you could get an old version, but with this one, you should be good to go. Okay, so what I wanted to show you here is there is kind of a really nice option. I'm going to go to the top view. When you're drawing curves, and the relationship here between curves and geometry is that these curves are what we're going to use surface commands on. So I can extrude this curve into a surface, and that's what makes them so important. In the early days of Rhino, I remember teaching a class, and the users or the students in the class were like, well, we really just want to do 3D. It's like you can't separate the relationship between curves and getting to your 3D objects. And it's the curves, if you create them correctly in the right place at the right size, then you'll have less editing to do with your surfaces downstream. So they are, again, really important. And whatever layer is current, so if I make the layer tab current here, that is the layer that we'll be drawing on. But there's one other thing, couple other things I want you to change here, and then we'll move into our project here in about 10 minutes. I want you to go to options. And in options, there's a page called modeling aids. And modeling aids has an option on it called cursor tooltips. And if you don't know what I'm doing, you'll see here in a moment. I like to turn on distance and relative point angle. And that way, when we're putting in the polyline or line or doing any type of editing, we're going to get feedback from Rhino on distance and angle. Okay, so there's two parts to options. One part is stored in the model. The other part is stored on your system. So the change that we're making here in modeling aids will be remembered in Rhino. So you only have to do it once. And if you don't like it, you can come back here and turn it off. The other thing that I like to have you do here is go all the way down to view and make sure you scroll down and turn on the linked viewports. And this way, when I have linked viewports on, any zooming or panning will be done in all parallel views. So it's super efficient. Okay, pick OK, and let's go back out. So if I go back here to the top view, you can see I'm scrolling and panning all of the parallel viewports. If I go to the perspective view, that doesn't affect the perspective view. However, let's look at drawing a polyline. So if I pick a start point for the polyline, you can see now feedback that I'm getting from the cursor. Okay, I like that. I'm used to AutoCAD. It has feedback like this. So anyway, I will leave that up to you. You can certainly turn it off if you don't like it. I lost the battle for having it on by default, so I like to show you here that you can turn that on, and maybe it will be helpful to you. If you haven't tried the Rhino's curve command, it's our freeform command. It will give you a good idea as you're creating the curve how much more flexible that curve can be. You probably want to turn ortho off. Okay, so the curve command supports flexibility that the polyline command does not, and it's a higher degree, so it's degree 3 or higher. When I pick on the curve, I can noodle it, or I can modify it by changing the location of those control points. Okay, which brings up the number one tool, modeling aid for you to use in Rhino, which is the gumball. So if you haven't used the gumball yet, uh, hopefully it will be one of the best things you learned today. The gumball is a widget that appears on geometry so that you can manipulate it without going into a command. So if I pick on any of these curves, I can move them. Okay. I can rotate them and I can scale them using the gumball. Now I can move, let's say 5 units. If I type in here on the arrow in exact distance, negative will move it in the negative direction, and scale I can type in a factor for that. I can also move a window of geometry or control point. So if I pick those control points and I type in 5, then it moves those control points 5 units over. So in Rhino, you can do a crossing window to select everything. You can hold the control key down to remove from the selection set. You can hold the shift key down to add to the selection set. So just basic Windows selecting plus a few little bonuses here will come from when you're inside the Rhino viewport. If you lock a layer, then you won't be able to select it. So if I lock the dimension layer and I try to select anything on that layer, the selection will be ignored. So it will be essentially protected. Okay, so this layer here, the dimension layer, if I unlock it, then I can select it. Any of these curves we can very quickly bring into 3D by extruding. So if I make the surfaces layer current here, I can pick on this curve and I can extrude it using the ball on the gumball. So that's one other feature of the gumball. I can undo that. If you use the sphere, it will extrude. Now, if you're extruding at a specific distance, I recommend going up to solid or surface and getting extrude curve. This is an open curve, so it won't be creating a solid. We don't have the option of that unless it's closed. So I can extrude straight and I can use my tooltip over here. And let's say I want to extrude 36 millimeters. I can extrude inches. If I type in 2 inches, either the inch mark or IN for inches, it will override the millimeters and convert that distance into inches. So anytime you're typing in a distance, if you follow it with the common modifiers, IN for inch, MN for millimeter, CM for centimeter, M for meter, it will override that distance with a conversion to that unit. Okay. When it comes to the boxes that are already done here, you can manipulate them with the gumball. And if you drag the gumball and tap the Alt key, you can copy. Okay, so anything that you want to copy, you can tap the Alt key before you pick a location and set them down. And once you get them copied, you can scale them. And if you know a scale factor, you can type it in. So let's say 0.25. I want to scale this 0.25. I can type that in, or I can just drag it to it looks good and take that box and turn it into something that a few moments ago it was not. Another feature of a closed poly surface or a solid is that you can find out volume. So we can get area from a surface, but we get volume from a solid. One other feature of the gumball that's going to be really important to the model that we'll be creating is to use the gumball to pick on this plane. And Rhino uses construction planes. That's where we're drawing on. The reason why I'm drawing a rectangle here and it's going on the top construction plane is because that's the current construction plane. And I can go up here to C plane and make any type of additional construction planes from a surface, from 3-point, from a view. And if we were in, and I'm going to rotate this around here to make it a little bit more dramatic. If we were in Rhino, I think I just rotated. Ortho isn't helpful sometimes. Okay, so I'll just rotate that around. Let's say that we were in Rhino 7. Okay, this was 2 years ago, and for some reason we're in the getting started. We're using Rhino 7. I would have to have you go set C plane to 3-point and pick 3 points on the face of that box to set the construction plane. And it still works today. However, I have a much easier and new option for Rhino 8 to introduce you to. So now that I've set the C plane, I can go back to the top C plane either from here or from a panel called named C-planes. Okay, so named C-planes will let me move between any C-planes that I save as well as the ones that come with Rhino. Okay, so let's see how Rhino 8 changes this. Notice down here in the lower left corner, there is an option called Auto C-plane. Okay, so what's that going to do for us? It's going to work in conjunction with the gumball and change the C-plane to a sub-object or an object that I select. Now, before I turn it on, if I hold down Shift and Control, I can pick an object that is part of a polyline. Okay, so if I wanted to change the shape of this pyramid, I could do that by moving that face. I can also move an edge. Okay, so instead of moving the entire face, I can just move an edge out. So let me do this. I do have an option to make this part of the video. You will need Shift plus Control plus Pick. Okay, that equals sub-object selection. So if you need to select a sub-object, you can do that with Shift plus Control. So give it a try here before we look at the Auto C-plane feature. Okay. If you have any trouble with that, make sure and let us know in the chat. Well, now that I know how to select a sub-object, I can use that with Auto C-plane. If I turn Auto C-plane on, and I want you to stay aware of what your setting is here, because there are times where it is not helpful. So you need to be able to turn that off. Make sure you hold Shift and Control down together and then pick on your object. And when you move it, the gumball may be aligned to the construction plane, but you're still leaving behind those other surfaces, but everything that it is attached to does change. Okay, so give that a try. Shift and Control to pick a face or to complete just picking an edge. Okay. So with the auto seaplane on, and this will take some practice, so make sure and practice again with the video. With the auto seaplane on, watch what happens when I pick on the curve. It sets the construction plane to that curve. Okay, well, that wasn't very exciting, so let's do this. Shift and Control, pick on the top of the box, make sure and escape to remove any selection, and notice what happened there. The construction plane is on the top of the box. So how do I prove that I'm on the top of the box? So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Okay. And if I wanted to save this construction plane, I could. Okay. So what happens if I shift and control on the side of the box? Well, I'm now on that construction plane. And all I have to do is draw a rectangle or a circle or something to help you see that we're on that side of the box, and I can also save that. And I might type in something more helpful here, like side of box. Okay, so watch what happens using the name Seaplanes panel. I can double click to move back and forth between all of these construction planes. Okay, that is going to be important as we're adding windows, openings to our model that we're going to put together here coming up next. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I think those are the main things I need you to know. Rhino does create meshes, but we've bought meshes in from a SKP file, a SketchUp file. Some are DWG and DXF. Also, OBJ is a mesh. Most formats are mesh. Materials formats are for surfaces are IGES and STEP. So if you're going to SolidWorks or even to AutoCAD that supports NURBS now, you want to use IGES. Let's go ahead and open. I haven't done anything here to save this, or maybe I have. If I pick save, then I will just call this what is Rhino, just in case we have to get back to it for questions. But there we go. Let's go ahead and open up the file that you downloaded called Start Here 3. I go through quite a few renovations when I'm doing the file to start with, just to make sure we all kind of have a good place to begin. And when you open up this file, go ahead and make your layer panel current. And you can see that we have a pretty extensive list of layers. There was a survey done probably 20 years ago with AutoCAD on the amount of layers that most architectural models had, and it was about 400. So anyway, I don't think we've hit that, but you could see it is pretty extensive. And if you need to, go ahead and stretch this out so we can look at more of the options here. If you right click up here, you can see we have them all on. We can turn off ones that we're not using just so that we can see other options more clearly, and we can drag these columns around. So one thing you can do with so we'll just leave the layers here. Let's double click on the top view. We'll be working here, and I have a little note. It's actually a text field that's giving us what the square foot final square footage of the new addition that we're doing here. Something important when it's complete and we're getting our final inspection, the county inspector will come out and add that to our appraisal. So some good information here that we need to keep an eye on as we're designing this new addition. If you look down here, we are on a layer called walls proposed. And I remember getting that kind of beat into me in my first job. It's not new walls, it's proposed walls. So anyway, way back when I kind of got that figured out. Okay, so we're on the layer called wall proposed, and I'm going to start with the polyline, and you can take it from up here. If I use my little sketch tool, you'll see where it's at on the sidebar. You can also go up to curve and down to polyline. And I have a point here for you to snap on, and it turns out it looks like the endpoint OSNAP will pick on it, but if you want to make sure you can get that point OSNAP checked and pick on that point, and we are going to turn ortho on so we can lock into vertical here. And I want to draw a wall that is 12 foot long. So I'll type in 12 feet. I'm going to include the foot mark since the unit in this model is inches. If I don't, I'll get 12 inches. So the foot mark or feet, I would always use the foot mark over typing in feet. But after I get that distance locked in, I'll pick. And then I'll drag my cursor to the right, and the next distance is 13 foot 6.5 inches. Okay, so if I type in 13 feet 6.5, I don't need the inch mark because Rhino assumes that anything after the foot mark is inches. And I can put in the decimal equivalent, or I can put in the fractional, and it will take either. So I'll pick here. And then as I'm doing my final length here, I could snap onto this existing line with something like perpendicular, or I could type in 12 again. So I'll go ahead and enter to complete that. And now I have the outside wall for the addition, and I'm going to offset it on the inside. So up under curve, a lot of times in the training, I'll take commands from the menu because they're easier to find. You can for sure use your help, and it will tell you where the offset command is and what to look for. But I'm going to take it from up here, and you'll find it on Curve Tools, and you can see the pictures. So a lot of helpful information. You're welcome to type it in. And Rhino does have the option of doing aliases, which are shortcuts. So if you use that a lot, you might want to do OF. We won't do it right now, but I'm just saying that is possible. Okay, so I'm going to type in 4, and I'm not only going to offset it to the inside by 4, but take a look at this option up here called cap equals none. Okay, we're going to change that to cap equals flat. And that way, when I offset it on the inside, it will put on that nice straight cap. So I'll type in 4 and enter, and then cap equals flat, and that looks good. So I'll just pick a point. And when I do that, you can see that the offset the curve, capped it, and joined it together. So we're ready here to extrude this into a wall, but we'll do that here in a few moments. But you can test out this option of cap even with a single line. If I offset it and use the cap equals flat option, I get a closed curve. Okay. And if I use, let me grab that line again. Oh, that was a control point. Edit, let me just draw another line. When I did the offset, I told it to go ahead and delete input. Another option when you're offsetting a curve is to go both sides and use cap equals round. Okay. So just some options to the offset that you might find helpful and want to be aware of. Okay, so next I have to do two inside walls. There's one other thing here. I do have a layer that um, it's not the layer that's locked, it's actually the outline of the area that's locked. So watch what happens here when I go up to the, the lock and I right click on it. Okay, this curve unlocks, and I could have a lot more objects unlocked than this, but fortunately I don't. When I pick on this curve, it's on the layer called floor, tile floor. But currently it's not matching up with my walls. So remember sub-object selection? Who can forget, right? Control Shift plus pick on this curve, and you can either drag it back to where it looks good, or you can actually go up here and move it very accurately, with an object snap to the endpoint. You just have to be a little bit more careful that you're only moving that line. And in the last case, I think I ended up moving the control point. Okay, so I want to get that lined up with my new inside, and when I do that, the area updates with the new area, which is still 150 square feet, but it's just a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm going to use this layer coming up here called tile floor, but for right now, I'm going to turn it off. When I turn it off, then I can kind of concentrate on the interior walls here. And we have two to create. Now, Rhino has an option called Smart Track, which works pretty well. It takes a little bit of practice, and I'm going to show you both, but there's nothing wrong with creating the geometry and using gumball to move it. And sometimes it's efficient because with Smart Track, we have to be a little bit more aware of the input sequence. So if I'm doing another rectangle and I want to measure it from this inside corner, I'll turn on Smart Track and I'll take the rectangle and I want to turn off the center O snap. You can see it's kind of getting in my way. And when I trap that corner and drag my cursor away, the Smart Track line shows up. Okay, so that means I can type in 3 feet and enter, and I'm now starting my rectangle 3 feet in. Okay, again, Smart Track, you've got to get used to the sequence and the lines on the screen. And I'm going to show you an alternative. If you are struggling a little because it's all new, I have another option to show you. So when I'm drawing a rectangle, the X distance is always the first. So this is going to be a 4-inch wall. So I'll type in +4, and the length is going to be 4'8". Now, if I type in 4'8", you can see it goes in the positive direction. So let's flip that around, -4'8". And Rhino 7 and 8 do a real nice job of previewing this for us. So all we have to do is enter, and we have our wall. Now, what I like to do, as I mentioned earlier, is place a dimension so I can always be aware of what that dimension is. And if I move this wall over, let's say 6 inches, then that dimension updates because it's historical. Okay, but let's roll back. What if Smart Track just isn't working for you right now? You can create the rectangle at the corner. And the same way we did, it's 4 by 4'8". And again, we need the -4'8". So it moves down in the Y construction plane. And now that we have it, let's just move it over 3 feet. Okay, so that may just be easier today. It might be easier always. I don't know, but Smart Track or use that to create the geometry and then move it. I'll do that again down here. I'll pick in the corner. The wall is, yes, post the path to turn on the measurement. Oh, yes, yeah, this is, and sorry, Colleen, I do this all the time, so I know it comes real fluidly. But up under drafting, pick linear dimension. Okay, and you can also get it off the drafting toolbar, but just pick two endpoints, drag the cursor up, and place the dimension. So it's pick, pick, pick. And now that dimension is going to update with the location. There you go. Yeah, wonderful. Okay. The other thing you can do with this dimension, since it does have control points, you can move the text, you can move the dimension, so you have all those. I'm going to undo that. You have all those controls. And I dimension often and early. And sometimes I'll put them on the dimension layer. Sometimes I'll do that after. So if I do cell dim, I can select all the dimensions later and I can put them on the dimension later. Okay, so I don't have to worry that right now they're not on the dimension layer. We can do that little bit of cleanup later. Okay, so if I were going to use Smart Track here, I'd have to have it on before I took the command. And annotation style, Henry controls that. So go into the annotation style and you'll find all of that. So we're not dimensioning in the unit or the precision of the model. We're dimensioning in the precision of the dimension styles. That means you can have different dimension styles with different levels of precision. Okay, so go into the dimension style and you'll find that. Okay, back to the wall. This wall is also 3 foot, but it's minus 3 feet, and that looks good. And the height of it is positive 4, and I just need to make sure and enter negative 3 feet and 4, and there we go. We got pick, and we have the wall. Now this wall is going to be located 3'10" from that edge. So again, gumball is great. Just pop it into the correct location. Okay, and if I wanted to make sure that I typed it in correctly, I could throw a dimension down and worry about the layer later. Okay. Very good. Now, what I like to do is put these curves on their own layer. So I'll go to the wall proposed layer and make a sub layer called CRV. Okay. Well, right now, and I'll make it a bright color so I know there's something different about this layer. It's not current, but I can change these curves that I just drew to that layer. And the way I like to do that is to right click over walls proposed and picked select objects. Okay. Now that picks the dimension as well. I can hold the control key down and remove it. I really not worried about that, but I do want to put the curves on their own layer. So I can go down here with them selected. And there's other ways for you to select them too. A window is fine. And I'm going to put them on the wall curve layer. Okay, so now they're green and I will be able to extrude these curves into a wall and make sure that the curves and the surfaces are on separate layers. And it's just, I like to be able to turn the curves off when I'm done with them. I could also cell curve and delete them all, but it's in case I want to get back to these, I like to do that. And I'll show you kind of one reason why and something we haven't talked about yet, and that is that the extrude command supports history. And if I turn history on before I do the extrude into the wall, if I change the wall curves, then they will update the wall. So it's just a feature of Rhino where, And you don't have to use it, but I think it's good to start thinking about how it can be used. So if I turn on history here and I right click on curve and do select objects. Okay, so two things. Turn, actually, I'll come back to history, but right click on curve and do select objects. So that's a really nice way to select everything on this layer. Okay, and then we'll go up to solid, extrude planar curve straight. You could also take it from the solid tools menu toolbar. I'll pick extrude planar curved straight. Okay, so you can start to see how we're growing the walls, right? I'm going to turn record history on and type in 8 feet. And when I type in 8 feet, I'll enter. And now we have walls that are tied to the curves. So what happens if I take this curve and I move it another 12 inches? See how the wall changed? And it might be more instructive to show you the shaded view. So if I move this wall 12 feet, or I'm sorry, curve 12 feet, then the wall moves. Okay, so there's history here that's attached to the curve. Okay, and sometimes it's more helpful or it's easier to edit the curve and just let the extrusion update. So let me turn ortho off and I could take this curve. I'm not going to keep any of this, but I want to show you what history does. Okay. You don't, and actually you really don't need to turn on history, but it is an option. Okay. I'm not concerned with history. And I'm probably going to turn the layer off or delete them later. So let me do this again without history. So right click on curve, select objects, go up to solid and extrude planar curve straight. If you have help activated, you can see what that looks like off the extrude menu. So if I were on solid tools, I could take the extrude from the right here from the menu. So you can grab it from the side toolbar instead of having to go up to the menu. And it will take time, but you will get used to the toolbars and where things are located. But I'll use the pull downs whenever I can just to save time. So I'll type in 8 feet and there we go. We have our curves, we have our walls, and I'm feeling a little claustrophobic with this design. So let's go ahead and get a window in this wall. Now, one thing that happened here when I extruded that, it doesn't look like it's a solid. So if I go up to solid and cap planar holes, then I can turn it into a solid. Okay. And so it says one of the geometries did not have a closed loop. And that is kind of interesting. So let's look at this one and and it might have been because we reselected the curves. Let's try extruding this one. Now I have a little, um, I have a way to make sure this is a planar curve and I can show you that, but let's just see what happens. And this is some of the troubleshooting. So it is this curve. It looks like maybe I control point dragged one of the edges here, so it's not planar. So we can make it planar by projecting it to the floor surface here, or by projecting it to the construction plane. So let's try project. And you might not have to do this because I think I actually messed it up as I was um, playing around with one of those corner curves. So let me go ahead and project it onto this surface. And let's take a look at what we know about the curve. It says that it's an open curve. So and it may be just down here. So what I'm going to do is use a command called close curve. And if I can close this curve up, now when I extrude it, solid, extrude planar curve straight, it looks like solid equals yes. Great. Okay, so we now have our closed solid. Like I said, I think I moved a control point, messed it up. You probably don't have to do that. But I noticed that my walls weren't solid, which will affect us downstream, especially if we're trying to 3D print this. So I'm happy to get that straightened out and do a little bit of troubleshooting with you. So I am going to turn off Auto Seaplane, and I want to open up a panel called the Block Definitions panel. And when you open this up, you will see all of the blocks that are included with this file. Not all of them are used, which brings up the concept of the template, right? You can have a template with blocks that are going to be used. It does create a little bit bigger file, but it's an easy way to share common blocks. Now, you could share them in a folder, and then you'd have to give access to the folder and then insert and navigate to the folder. This just simplifies that. So with the block definition panel, I can see there's a block here called 5 foot by 2 foot double window, and I want to insert that into the file. So I have two options. I can drag and drop, which when I drag and drop, I only get to pick an insertion point. I don't get to rotate it around. So that's an option. I can move it with my gumball, and put it in place and do all that stuff to get it in the proper location. But I can right click on it instead and pick insert. And when insert starts, I'll probably do the same. I want to uh, place it on the wall at a location that I think looks good for our design. So I don't have an exact location. I can extract the exact location with a dimension later, but this is designing in Rhino. So it's bringing something in, moving it around. And I know when my contractor comes out here, he's going to tell me anyway, it's going to be 6 inches from the ceiling. So even if I make it 6.5 inches from the ceiling, he's not going to do it that way. So anyway, we can get as close as we can. But what I'm going to do here is just pick a good location for that window. I want to leave it out of the shower area as much as possible. And I want to bring it over as close as possible to the wall that we're separating the water closet. So here's our window. It's in place. You can scroll around or zoom around here, see it from the back. You can see where it's located up here. And if you want, you can move it forward or back in the top view, but I think it's pretty much where I want it to be. The window, however, um, they can't look out because there's a wall in the way. So we need to trim the wall out. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. There are numerous ways, but what I like to do is draw a rectangle. Now, the first thing you're going to notice while I'm drawing the rectangle is it's drawing it on the construction plane, which is the top, and that's not where I want to draw it. So let's go to Auto C-plane, Shift and Control on the wall, and now you can see that that's my current C-plane. I can draw parallel to a construction plane, but I can't draw perpendicular. Okay, I'm going to end up with that object sitting on the floor. This curve has a very special icon on it, and it's called cut. So like I said, one of the options you have is to extrude it into a box and difference it, or you can use the gumball cut to do all of that in one step. And I think it's pretty easy. I think it's the most efficient, so that's what we're going to use here. So I'll grab the little cut bar and I'm going to drag it back just so I go all the way through the wall. And when I do, you can see what happened. Okay, so pick on the wall. I now have an opening in the wall, and I have cut through, and I have the window. Okay, so having that window block made it very easy to get to this point. So having a good window block that's reusable is super helpful. If you're dragging or dropping and you don't see the window, then turn off Auto C-plane, number one. Okay, make sure you are on the top construction plane, and turning Auto C-plane off will help. The second thing is don't use drag and drop. Right click and use insert. It gives you a little bit more control. Okay. The other thing you need to really watch out for is not having a command active. So if you have the polyline command active and you're trying to drag and drop a block, it's not going to do it. It's going to keep the polyline command and ignore everything you're doing. Okay, so clear the command line and escape. Make sure Auto C-plane is off. And you're going to see a couple more ways that we do that here because I've got a few other windows to add. Okay, the next opening that I want to make is in this wall that's separating the shower. And I don't really have a window. I'm just going to make an opening and put glass in it. So I don't have a window to insert, but I am going to draw a rectangle. And again, look at what's happening. I'm trying to draw my rectangle and it's on the floor, and I don't want to draw it on the floor. I want to draw it on the wall. So immediately I go back to Auto C-plane, and it's already on, but I need to Shift and Control pick the wall. So Shift Control pick the wall. That changes the construction plane to that wall. Now I can draw my rectangle, and I want to go from here, and I could just draw a square. I'm just doing, how about 12? Okay, so 12, and that will be the length, and 12 minus 12 will be the height, and that's what I want. Okay, so there's the curve, and I want to identify where the midpoint of the wall is. So just draw a line. I want to make sure that wall looks good here. I'm also going to have the plumbing fixtures coming through between the windows. I want to leave enough to frame up where the piping for the plumbing fixtures is going to go. So I think that looks good. Let's go ahead, and you can either mirror or copy. There's mirror. Mirror, you have to pick 2 points. Copy may be a little bit faster. So if I grab the curve and do copy, I would pick here. It's not it's symmetrical, right? So I really don't have symmetry to maintain with a mirror, but it's usually my go-to command. So now that I have these 2 curves, what I want to do is use that same gumball cutter and cut an opening. So I'm going to grab the cutter, drag with the gumball, and remove that portion of the wall. And that's where the window or glass is going to be placed. So I'm going to drag the curve back, and I'll use these curves to create glass. But I do need to make the glass layer current. I'm going to use obscure glass. So if you look over on your layer list here, you'll see obscure glass under the glass category. Rhino has hierarchical layers, so I've got those kind of organized there. I'll go up to surface and surface from planar curves, and it will go on the obscure glass layer. Now, how do I know it's on that layer? Well, I could make it a different color. I could change it to magenta in that way. And as soon as I'm ready to turn on materials, we'll be able to see that glass material because it's already defined. Now, the other thing that I treat a lot like a window is the shower niche. And if you type in over here, it will search your block list and bring up only the blocks that have niche. So when you're looking at, it's kind of an intimidating list, but you could probably find your way down to niche, but you could type in up here a filter. And I want to either drag and drop or add niche. Now, the block will look at the construction plane, so I need to turn off auto C plane, and the block generally comes in best on the top construction plane. So let me insert it, and here comes the block. I could use Smart Track. I could use the O snap here to snap, at the midpoint, although the midpoint is from here to here, right? So Rhino does have a between O snap. So if I type in between, I can pick here and here, and it will snap halfway between. I'm going to enter. Now, that didn't help me at all in the Z direction. And honestly, I just want to place it more in line with the midpoint. Smart Track does do a pretty nice job of that. So if I take Smart Track and I pick here and here and then go to midpoint, it automatically has that option selected. So that shows me that's just another feature of Smart Track. And now that I have that, it's a little bit easier to line up, although Rhino can be as technical as you want to be. So if you want to give it the exact dimensions, it's happy to do it with architecture within 1/4 of an inch. They say is acceptable. I try to get within 1/8, but that looks good on that shower wall. And we're going to cut through the niche just like we did with the window. Now, one thing that this block has, let me show you by putting it in render mode. This block, sometimes I thought I had a curve. I might have cleaned it up and deleted it, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and draw that rectangle. So just like we did before, auto C plane, shift and select, and now you're ready to draw the rectangle that you're going to cut through the wall with. Okay, so there's the rectangle. I'll grab the cutter. The cutter's working really great for this model. And if you look around, we have a hole in the wall and we have a place. Niches are expensive because of all the framing. I think they're totally worth it. They make such a clean option for the bathroom design. So, but if you talk to the contractor, they're essentially framing up a window. So it's not something that is super easy to do. There are some kits you can buy, but my niches are usually never the size of the kit, so they're always something custom. Okay, now that we're in render view, you can really start to appreciate what we have done. And I want to put the, I want to do the floor, which makes sense before we put in the tub and the toilet, just like a virtual build. I'm also going to build up a triangular bench in the back here. Again, I want the floor before I do that. So let's go to the tile floor layer, and we already have the curve here that is the inside of the um, bathroom that will give us the surface for the tile floor. Okay, and if we didn't have it, we could just trace it out using our polyline command. So if I stick with surfaces, not solids, then it's going to be very easy to extract out the area of the surface. So let's make the tile floor layer current and select the curve and go to surface, and on the surface menu, pick from planar curve. Okay. And when you do that, the tile that is on this layer comes with Rhino. It's called thin blue, and it's on in architectural wall um, part of the library. So if I pick import from material library, architectural wall tile, it's in here. Okay, just so you know, it's not anything custom, although I could take any tile and make a material out of it using the custom material. But this one came with Rhino. The only thing I did to it is I rotated it because I really love that 45-degree. I think it makes the room look more expansive. So I rotated the texture 45 degrees to create this rotated or 45-degree tile look. Now, it is more expensive. Installation is more expensive, and you need about 20% more tile. So it has to be worth it for you. And that's part of what um, virtually building this design is helping us with. Now, it's real common to run the tile all the way through, the shower, but I want to give the shower a different tile material. So I need to split this surface. And this command called split by isocurve is worth millions, I think. So watch what happens. Split by isocurve. So I right click over split, and I can split in either the U or the V direction, which has to do with the surface topology. But you get to split in this direction or toggle it and split in the other direction. So I want to split on the inside of the shower, and then I want to toggle it and split in this direction. Okay, so I have 4 surfaces now. This one and this one are really the same. Okay, so that surface, this surface, and that surface. Those are actually the same material. So I'm going to join them together, and there's a command off of Solid Tools where I can merge all of those faces. And if I merge all the faces together, let me tear off this toolbar. If I merge all the faces, then it will look like one surface. Okay. Okay. And notice this over here. Okay, this surface is its own. And I'm going to tear off the push-pull toolbar because I like to reference it. And there's merge all coplanar faces. So I can pick this poly surface and merge all coplanar faces. And that way it now has lost those division marks. And if I look at it here, it is just one trimmed surface. And it's only aesthetic. It really doesn't matter in the behavior of it, whether it's a surface or a poly surface. Join has to join on edges. So if I would have grouped it together, it wouldn't have made sense because it's already selecting as one object. But join gives me the ability to make this a poly surface and then turn it into one surface. So join has to share edges or endpoints if it's a curve. So it's a very different command than group. Group just lets me bring objects together that are unrelated into a set of objects that selects at one time. Now, this is a block. It could be a group if we wanted it to be, but the block is going to give me one more step above that. And that is if I were doing, a whole house, then it would allow me to count. So if I were using this 5 times, it would give me a count, and changing the block definition would update all of the blocks on the model. Okay, so if I take these 2 walls here, and I can pick the glass to go with it, and I group them together, then I can select them at one time. So that's a group, okay? I can't join those together. They have no common geometry, okay? Okay, good. And then I can ungroup and bring them back out again. So groups are super helpful. They're very fast, but in some cases, like this one here, we wanted to join to make one surface. Okay, I'm going to pick the inside of the shower surface. I don't want it on that layer. I want it on a layer called shower tile floor. And when I do that, you can see that the tile for the shower floor appears. Now, the other, if I go to my layer panel, I can make shower tile floor current. And I want to draw the bench on the shower tile layer because I want it to show up in that same color. So I'm going to do a rectangle, and I want to make sure I pick now at the bottom, not the top. And this rectangle is going to be -22 on each side. Okay, so and I could do, there's some quick rectangle commands that do a square, but this is a square bench. And to make it look, I mean, we could do a square bench, but to make it look more spacious, I'm going to make it a triangular bench. So I can delete this control point on this curve. Watch what happens. Okay, when I delete it, it turns into, I'm going to turn auto seaplane off, it turns into a triangular curve. And that's the bench that that I want. And while I'm at it, I want to scale one up to use as the quartz top. So in transform, scale, 2D, I'm going to pick here and here, and I want that to be 24. Okay. Now, one thing I didn't do, so we'll do it again, is I need to select copy, because at the end of the scale, I want a copy. So now I'll type in 24. So I have 2 curves, and these 2 curves I'm going to use to build the corner bench. So I'm going to move them up with the gumball 18 inches. Okay, and that gets us ready for the 2 extrusions. The smaller one, I need to extrude planar curves straight, and I'll extrude it all the way to the floor. So it's really nice to have that tile floor. And because I'm on the shower floor layer, it immediately shows up there. Now, the quartz layer I'm going to use to extrude that top, which will be a quartz top. So I'll make that the current layer, and we'll do the extrude again. So I can right click up here and pick solid extrude. And because I buy quartz in centimeters, I'm going to type in 2 centimeters. Okay, and Rhino takes care of the conversion. So the shower is looking pretty good. I think we can go ahead and put in the doors, and I'm going to and the fixtures. So if you look down under the tub toilet layer, there's a fixtures 2 layer. I want that current when we add the shower controls. So again, make sure auto seaplane is off and go to your block panel, and let's put in, I'm going to filter on shower so I can get the shower control. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the shower control. And when I bring it over, I'll just bring it in at the midpoint. And when we bring it in at the midpoint, you can see that we need to move it down so it's more in the middle of the wall. And then we also want to rotate it. And if we rotate with the gumball, we'll rotate about the center and have to move it again. You could also move the gumball, but what I prefer to do here is just a standard technical rotate where I'm picking 2 points and then rotate it around that point. I think that's more efficient. I get the right answer most of the time. And now you can see that we have our block, which are Kohler blocks for the shower control. If you want to know more about it, you can go to the URL here, which is in the block library. You can also go to object properties and pick on the hyperlink here. It'll take you right to that control. We have another block to insert. It's actually more of a glass door. So we may want to make the glass layer, the current layer, even though it's coming in on the obscure. The block itself has geometry on the obscure glass layer. We can move it to a different layer if we decide later it's not working, but I want to bring the glass panel door in so I can drag it. I'll pick the insertion point at the bottom of the wall, and that, because we had auto seaplane off, that came in beautifully. Okay, so if you need to scoot it around, if you want to move it back in off that wall, you can do that right here. Okay, so you can decide, I'm going to just put it on the edge. So we have the tub, toilet, and the 2 vanities to bring in. Those actually go very quick. We have one more door here too. So let's go ahead and do the door, and then we'll do the other fixtures. So you can kind of see at this point how fast the model is going. I've got autosave working here, but I'm going to go up to File and pick Save As, and I'm going to call it Master Bath Class Model because I don't want to lose anything I've done. Autosave isn't something you want to rely on. I probably should save it about every half hour or so, or as I like to say, I save it whenever I do something I don't want to redo. So let's go back to layer, and I have a door to put in. So I'm going to make the window door layer the current layer, back to blocks, and let's type in door. Notice how great the filtering is. You can filter on layers as well. This is brand new with Rhino 8. And I want to do a door with a glass panel. So I want it to look a little bit lighter in here, give some privacy, but um, make sure that it is has a light look. Now I inserted it at the corner. It's coming in at the other corner. I can do that again and um, use my O-snap to get to that corner. I could also use Smart Track to track over. Near is probably okay, but there's no endpoint on that particular curve to snap to. But I probably did better doing it that way than I would have had to move it anyway. So that looks pretty good. But I do want to add that final piece of wall up here. So we'll go back to auto seaplane. We'll pick on this object. You can't really see it unless we go back to shaded and you look at the grid, but we are on that plane and I need to create a curve. And this curve needs to represent the part of the wall that is coming in over the door. Okay, now I don't really have anything here to snap to, so I'm just going to pick what looks good. Long as it's planar to the surface, here comes push pull. And push pull was new in Rhino 8. And if I have a curve on a surface and those two are planar, if I pick push pull, then I can pull, and we've done push before with the help of the gumball, but you can also pull and create a new surface for that poly surface. So we have that room enclosed now, and when we turn on the ceiling layer, you'll see how it caps everything off. So turn auto seaplane off, go back to the layers, and we are on the window door layer. We want to be on the tub toilet layer, and let's insert those blocks. And if you want to go back to rendered mode, it might be a little bit more realistic at this point. Let's go to blocks again, and let's search on tub. Okay, here's the tub. I can pick it up and drag and drop it on here. Again, I have to make sure I'm not in a command. I can go to my top view and I'll use my top view. Again, we're designing, so we get to pick, where it looks good, and we'll rely on our dimension drawing later to come up with the exact location. Okay, so there's the tub, and let's go ahead and add the toilet, and then we want to add the controls for the tub filler and the vanity. So those are the two more things that we want to do. Again, all of these blocks I've used let me go ahead and pick here. All of these blocks I've used now that one came in a little low, but let's bump that one up. It's hard to remember all the insertion points for all the blocks that you're inserting, so being able to manipulate them after with the gumball is super important. And switch over to top view, and let's bring that in to line. Okay, I think that's good. And the vanities are going to come in as well. Now the vanities are actually a linked block. So if I go here to 42-inch vanity, you can see they're linked to the folder where your getting started materials are. And I'm going to insert that. The layer to insert on, there is a vanity layer, so if you want to make that active, and again, I'm going to bring it in and then we'll take care of placing it. Enter, enter. Okay, and we're going to want one of these on each side. So let's go to the top view. Great. Thank you so much. If you have to leave, I'll get that video out there for you. I'm hoping you found it interesting and something that even if you're a rocket scientist, somebody's going to ask you to design their kitchen or bathroom. So it's always really good practice to do realistic models. So let me go ahead and mirror this now that I have it in place. I'll mirror it over the midpoint here of the floor. Shift will temporarily turn ortho on. So we're now in pretty nice territory here to have the vanities in and all of those other fixtures. There was one other fixture I wanted to have you insert, and then we'll turn on some layers that have some other goodies. If you type in tub, you will see, not yub, tub helps to look at the key. There is a tub filler, so we want to bring that block in. And again, after we get it placed, we can pick on it again, go to the top view. Let's go ahead and get that set here. After we get it in place, we're going to rotate that around and then again, move it a little bit closer to the top. So it's actually filling the vessel. Let's go back to perspective view. And we might just bring that over a little bit more. Okay, that looks good. So what's next? Let's go to layer, and there's a layer called done. Go ahead and turn it on. Done will bring back or bring our ceiling in and some lights. It will also bring in the mirrors. So if you turn off the ceiling layer, then you can see our entire project is complete. Okay. So let's take a look at last thing. Hopefully you can stay. If not, it'll be in the recording. I did want to add a couple construction planes because I think at this point when the model is so complete, it's hard at times to work because there's so much in the way. So I do separate things out by layers just so, we can turn them off when they're not being helpful. But there is another option that we have, and that is to use a clipping plane. And I like the clipping planes to also be on their own layers. So I'll make a new layer and call it clipping plane. The clipping plane is not only going to clip the model so you can work, but those clipping planes are going to be helpful in generating the elevations. So we will name the clipping planes appropriately so that they reflect which part of the model that we're looking at. And of course, there's one for the top view of the model that will show the floor plan. And the clipping planes will be set to the layout detail. That's how we create our elevations. So I want to go to the top view. And I have a layer now called clipping planes. If you didn't make it, go ahead and make one and make it current. And the clipping planes are created under drafting, sections, and create. And if you watch the command line, you can see the clipping sections command start up. It's really important here to read the command line. So select objects or press enter for all. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to clip through everything in this case. So I will hit enter for all. And then because of the extents here of the subfloor, it does come in pretty big, but we'll scale them down here in just a little bit. So I do want to create one clipping plane here to look at the vanities, one to look at the shower, and then I want to rotate it to the Y direction. And actually I need one more, in the X, but we'll do that here in a little bit. I want to pick one looking at this side of the wall and then flip direction and look at the other side of the wall and then look through the water closet room. Okay, and then we're going to flip back to X and we're going to look at the back of the room. Okay, so this could be a panic point. I understand. But let's go ahead and select these anyway. Okay, select them and go to properties. And notice that the clipping planes are on for the top view. That's where the panic comes in. Uncheck it, and then your model will reappear. Okay? So we'll take care of setting the clipping planes to view by view. And I also like the clipping planes selected. I think I've got all of them because then I like to scale them. So I don't like them way out there, but that's where my geometry was. The only thing I need to move back, this one has to go back here. I think the others, maybe that one needs to go up here. This one needs to go down here. That one's probably okay. Okay. And this one is good, and this one is good. Okay, so what do these clipping planes do? Okay, well, let's start with the perspective view, and I'm going to pick on this clipping plane, and I'm going to make it active in the perspective view. Okay, that's what the clipping plane does. It shows you what if everything in back of the clipping plane's removed, what does this model look like? And you can move the clipping plane so you can study whether it's a product design and you have a shell or it's something like this, which is a pretty complex architectural model. You can drag the clipping plane to study how the geometry intersects. This is also one of our elevations that we're going to put on the layout. So you can check each one of these by just turning them on. And that one, the problem with that one was I left this one turned on. So I want to be able to turn that off and just turn them on one at a time because they're not, now spin that around. You can see that's the section right through the toilet room. Okay, so it looks like those are set up pretty good. If I were going to name them, I would call this one, let's start here. This one is north, and there's only one of them. This one is south, shower. And you could just name it something like South 1 is also just fine. And then this one is South 2. Okay, so what are the other ones? This one is west. Through the toilet room. This one is west tub. And this one is east. We only have one east as far as I can tell. Okay, great. So we have our clipping planes, and let's go ahead and assign them to the layout. So we need to create a layout, and if you pick on the detail layer, you'll find it under annotation. And let's go ahead and make a layout. So I'll pick the plus, pick new layout, and from here I can pick the count for the details, and I'm going to pick 4, third angle. The printer, I'll grab the Rhino PDF, and the size is architectural D size. Okay, so that's our size. And landscape, pick OK. So we get 4 views of the model. Our details are created on their own layer, and we'll be adding a title block to make it look more like a layout. So I'm going to scale these down with the gumball, and I'll move these two over, not double click, just click, and I'll move these two up. I'll probably make them smaller eventually, and these two down. Okay, so we have to have room for the title block. Looks like we have a lot of work to do, but we're actually in really good shape. Let's start with this one. Go ahead and zoom in on it. And when you've got the view that you want, set the display mode to rendered. And you can turn off the clipping planes in this view. Okay, so what we need to do is to scroll over to this option, which will turn the layer off in the detail. Okay, and in order to save a little bit of work here scrolling over, I'm going to turn off lock, line type, print color, print width, and I think I'll leave the rest on because I think the rest of them apply. So if I have to scroll over to get the off in detail, then we can probably I'll pick the clipping plane layer. We can drag this over so it's more convenient. So what I usually do is grab this one, detail on, and bring it over to the global on off. Now the global on off, let's say that I didn't do off in detail, that I did global. This would turn it off everywhere, including in model space, which wasn't what I want. So if I go back to the layout and I make the detail active, I can turn this layer off just in this detail. So that's pretty powerful. We'll be using that a lot. Let's zoom in on this. And before we can set it to monochrome, I like monochrome for this. If I pick on the edge of the detail, so I hope you're seeing double click to activate, double click to go back. You want to pick on the edge when the detail is not activated. You can type in the scale that you want the detail to be. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use 3/4 of an inch equals a foot. You can see it's 1:16. I'll go ahead and lock it in a bit here, so I don't want to mess with that scale once I get it set. And I can also use control points to stretch the detail. Okay, so if I want to see those dimensions, we'll take care of adjusting the detail shortly, but I will double click here and adjust the other two details at the same time. And that command is called synchronize. That's what I help. There we go. Synchronize views. And when I did that, you could see the other two details kind of jump and align in the front and the right view. So once I do that, I actually want to lock all of them so that I don't mess them up. And I can double click here and change it to monochrome, and double click here and change it to monochrome. Now, it doesn't look too bad for this view. However, the I might use that one and then copy the um, layout so we have another one, because that's a pretty cool view. But this one over here isn't very helpful because we need a clipping plane active. And for this view, as we're looking west, I'm going to go ahead and activate one of the um, clipping planes. And I have them on up here, which makes them pretty easy to work with. And from properties, I'll pick the main one here, and let's go ahead and assign it to the right detail. Okay, and when we do that, you can see how that appears over here, and now we're looking through the tub area. Okay, and for this one, if you wanted to do the um, clipping plane looking north, you could assign that to the front detail. Okay, I kind of like that for now. And I think it's helpful to have the clipping plane showing up here as well. We can add a title block, we can add dimensions. I do want to um, add one more layout, and then we'll be able to print, but there is a layouts panel. And on that layout panel, you can copy your existing layout. But I'll do that here in a moment. I want to make the title block layer current and drag a title block that we have in the model called title 36 by 24. I'm going to go ahead and drag that over here, pick an insertion point, and it looks like I had the detail active. Okay, let's do it again. Let's insert the title block. Now it's coming in, and enter, enter. Okay, so the title block will be copied with the layout. So if I go back to layout and I right click or pick duplicate, I get a second layout that has everything that the first layout has, which is okay because I can go ahead and uh, do some modifications. So there's layout 1, there's layout 2. I don't need this on layout 2. I may even take layout 1 and copy it again and change this to cover. You'll see what I'm getting at here in a moment. Cover will not have these details. Cover will only have images of the project. So it might be that one there. I might copy this one down here and make that one active. And when it's active, we can do set view to front. There we go. Okay, just put on the cover sheet, we could just put some fun renderings of the project. Sometimes I would say that I like the perspective view a little better. Just zoom it in to where you want it. I think it looks better if it's not absolutely parallel. That looks good. Okay, so here's page 1, which we'll rename page 1 just to keep things neat. And then here's page 2. And page 2, we'll be able to set a few more of our construction plane. So I'll go ahead and copy the detail, and this is just a little bit harder, but let's see how we do. Okay, so go back to perspective, and I need to set this to one of the front viewports. So this is going to be set to layout sheet 2, and let's pick one, the first one there, front detail. Okay, and then let's see how we did. Okay, and it looks like, let's go back to, takes a little bit of fiddling. One thing you do need to do is make sure this one is turned off in that same detail. So let's pick on it and then just see where it's active. I'll uncheck it here, and let's go back to that detail. Now this one, we can see the seaplanes, and it can be really helpful to be able to grab the seaplane and turn it on in that active detail. So that one is on and that one should be off. Now we can take this seaplane and we can move it back so that it cuts through that location. Okay, so it takes a little bit of fiddling, but you can get the seaplanes assigned to the viewport, and there's some tools in Rhino to help you with that. When you get ready to print, you can print all or some of these. I'll go ahead and save. And last thing we'll do is print. And I just want to show you some of my favorite features of print in Rhino 8, which you can not just print, but you can um, print multiple layouts, and you can uncheck the ones that you don't want to print. Okay, so if you only want to print those two, there's also an option to print using page size and open after saving. Additional options to print PDFs to separate files. So if you have that requirement, Rhino 8 will have that also for you. Okay, so I can close here and go to page 1 just to show you there are some dimensions here, and we created them. This one looks like it needs to bump back just a little bit so we can see it. But you can create dimensions either on the layout or in the detail. So for example, if I double click here, I can go to linear dimension and I can create a dimension from that corner. Sometimes near makes me a little bit worried because I would rather have the corner, and here to here. And then we can do a repeat on that and pick continue, and it will continue from the last dimension. So by default, you can do this set of chain dimensions. Now, there's a lot in this space, so it's spending some time trying to figure out, which of those that we want to use, which may be a better option to add the dimensions out here on the layout. Something you can do, and they will look identical to the dimensions that you have created in the detail. So you can create dimensions either place in the detail. Make sure you turn continue off or you'll have to undo. And here, when I take the linear dimension, I just want to click continue. No. And there is a shortcut button for that, and so on. So the dimensions work with the object snaps. They give you your accuracy and your speed. And the I think that is it. You can run the Python script that I shared if you want to count the block. So I have the count block script that we shared. You can double click on that and run it with the run Python script command, and it will export out all of your block counts. So export block count, this is the one that I shared with you. It'll be written to a CSV file. I can export out all of this information about our block, which really kind of closes the idea of why we design with blocks, so that we can come back and let's go ahead to this folder. There it is. I must have closed that or buried it under somewhere. Okay, so here's the CSV file, and all of the properties of the blocks and numbers have come out. Okay, so if there is a URL, that should have come out too. I don't know if I didn't check that, but this is the count is what you're interested in here, the total count, and there we can format that as a spreadsheet and bring it back in. The view name and how to scale the sheet. So the layout versus the detail, and how does the sheet is always one-to-one. So let me see if this is your question. The sheet is always one-to-one. It represents the paper that you put in your plotter. So if you look here on the layout, the sheet is 36 by 24. The details have a scale. That's fine. The details have a scale. So when you pick on them and go to properties, in addition to the typical properties we would expect from a detail like layer, color, there's this button here, which is detail properties. So you want to pick on that. And I set the scale and then locked it. But look what happens if I type in 24. Okay, so it scales it. Now it's at 1/2 inch equals a foot. If I'm using metric and I want to type in 30, I mean, it's the same. We would normally do 1 to 30 inches, but let's say that said millimeter on page to centimeter in model. That's where you set up the scaling or comparison so the view becomes to scale. But in imperial units, we might do 24 or 48 or 96. So that's where you set the scale. Now, once you set the scale, you need to lock the detail. So this one here, this one I'll set them to 16 like the other one. They didn't change much, but they were actually just slightly off from 16. So when you're done setting the scale, then you lock it. Okay. Yep. So the scale is set to the detail. Now I can print one view from model, and then I would have to scale it to fit on the sheet of paper. And that's what the layout is doing for you. It's it's having the details already scaled, ready to go. When you put your title here on this page, so if I go up to drafting and down to text block and I put in 0.5, and this one I'll call plan view. Okay, so I'll put that there, and then I'll do another text block for scale. And the scale can be something you type in, or you can link to that viewport. So if I do scale, FX, detail scale, select the detail, and then pick the formatting, it's going to place a text field, which is the scale. Now, the great thing about that is if I come over here and I change this back to 1 to 16, then it's going to display 3/4 of an inch equals a foot, or 1 to 18, or whatever format I chose to display that in. Okay. Then there's the perspective view that isn't to scale. Okay. However, I can lock it so I don't inadvertently change it. Okay. So now if I make the view active, I can't pan it or zoom it. But when you print, because you've already done that, you're all ready to go one-to-one to the printer. Okay. You can unmute your mics. Let me go ahead and stop the recording.